Just, I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I want to thank you all for being here. I think that we've expressed the importance of some of the decisions that we have before us as a school district. Want to take a step back and share with you that when I came to El Paso ISD, I made a choice because when you become a superintendent, you can choose where you want to apply. I made a choice to come to El Paso ISD because it was a community that was very similar to the community that I grew up in. And when I think about the state of Texas and the growing demographic of Hispanic people in Texas, I want to be a part of educating the populace that are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, the people that are going to be making the decisions for those of us who are here today. They are the future of this community. They are the future of our state, and they are the future of this nation. And so as an educator, it's critical and important to keep that in the forefront of all decisions that we make. You've heard me say on a number of occasions that education is the opportunity equalizer, and I'm firmly rooted in all decisions that I make in creating a path of opportunity so that students can find their strengths, find the path to success, and be who they want to be to continue to contribute to this community, to this state, and to this great nation that we call the United States of America. It was education that paved the way for my father to realize the American dream. And therefore, me, as his daughter, I'm living the American dream. I just became a grandmother. My daughter is a college graduate. She just had her first baby. She's living the American dream. I want for every child in El Paso ISD to have access to the American dream. And so here we are today, faced with some very difficult decisions about the future of our educational institution and being committed to delivering on the promise of a brighter future for every child and every family in El Paso ISD. So we've shared with the community that our commitment is to put every student in a higher quality seat as we think about the future of our school district. And the brutal reality for us right now is that we have a footprint in our school district that we currently can't afford. We've got, and when we think about the projected enrollment for our school district, we know that our enrollment will continue to decline. The primary reason for that decline in enrollment is a reduction in birth rates. And you've heard me say over and over again that for every 2 children that were born in 1990, there's 1 child being born in 2024. That's impacting El Paso ISD. It's impacting the state of Texas. It's impacting the nation. And you will, if you Google school closures, you're going to see all over the nation and in the state of Texas, there's a number of school districts who are faced with the very same things that we're faced with here in El Paso ISD. And that is, as we think about destination district redesign, we've got aging facilities, we've got budgetary constraints, while we want to continue to deliver higher quality learning experiences for the children and the families of El Paso ISD so that they choose El Paso. Our long-term goal is to become an A-rated destination district. We've communicated these realities to the community in over 20 community meetings. We started in May. We went back out in August and September. We've had a preliminary board meeting on October the 17th where we shared preliminary recommendations based on the data that we've reviewed from a demographic study, from the ACOM facilities report, and from feedback that we've received from the community. With that information, we prepared preliminary recommendations for the board, which were presented to them on the 17th, received feedback from the board, received a lot of public comment associated with our recommendations, And we're going to be going out to round 3 of community engagement starting tomorrow evening. And through the month of November, leading up to the vote and the final recommendations that we'll bring to the board in November. It's a very difficult decision that the board is faced with. And as the superintendent, my job at this point is to provide them as much information as I can provide them to make the most informed decision going forward. At the board meeting, I shared with the community that I serve at the pleasure of the Board of Trustees. And so whatever the outcome of that vote, should they vote in favor of the recommendations that we present as administration, then their job is to hold me accountable as a superintendent to execute the plan that I've presented. Should they not choose to vote in favor of the recommendations that are being presented, then again, I serve at the pleasure of the board, and we'll go back to the drawing board to continue to strategize how we deliver on the promise of a brighter future for every child and every family here in El Paso ISD. So with that, I'll take questions about the plan that we've presented and about some of the recommendations that we've made.
Just go around like so with Claudia.
Sure. Okay. So I was wondering if there's any more that you can tell us about the plan to work with UTEP to study the effects of school closures, and if there is any official agreement with the university yet on that study.
So I would say that there's no official agreement, so I want to answer that directly. I am in ongoing conversations with a number of professors there. I have a scheduled meeting, another follow-up meeting tomorrow. I had a debrief meeting with Dr. Sung, who has provided me a lot of literature, which, you know, I've looked at literature on my own, but she's also provided me a lot of literature, so I understand the reality of the decisions that we're making and the recommendations that we're making to the board. My ask of UTEP is that as we entertain making decisions that include the closure of 10 elementary schools and having those students relocate to a sister school or to a school of their choice, because we're open enrollment, and offering transportation to any school within their zone of excellence. I want research. I want a research study that follows what happens next. How effective was our transition plan? What are the outcomes of students? Are they finding success? Or are there negative impacts that are impeding their success? Because that research is going to be critical for us to continue to address any issue that might surface as a result of our decisions. So while I know that the research says that school closures can have significant negative impacts on students, I'm committed to developing a transition plan that mitigates as much as possible any negative impact, and continuing to follow students for the next 3 years. Not only the students who have been faced with a transition, but the receiving schools, to make sure that we're seeing, you know, positive outcomes, results from our decisions.
Okay, so if the initiative is approved, what is the timeline? Like, when are the schools closing? How, and like, when are they switching to the next?
So the remainder of the timeline, so the board will vote in November. As soon as the board makes their decision, should they support the recommendations that we bring forth, then we will begin immediately to execute the transition plan. However, the timeline will go through the spring, and students will not begin to attend their new school until the start of the 25-26 school year. So that's really the gist of the timeline. But we have specific timelines for example, we've already begun to have preliminary conversations with the faculties and staffs of the impacted schools that are that will be brought to the board, you know, for their consideration for closure. because faculty and staff have a lot of questions about their employment, right? So we'll begin to have those conversations. We've already begun to have those conversations, but once the decision is final, in December, we'll continue to have those conversations. And by the time that people leave for spring break, our commitment to employees is that they will have clear information about where their employment will be for the 25-26 school year before we start opening the door to interview and hire any new employees to fill vacancies. We are launching priority registration for parents, and we'll launch that priority registration beginning in January, and from January through spring break, right before spring break or the spring intersession, we want to make sure that all families that have been impacted by the decisions, have been given the white glove treatment, if you will, to walk them through registration and make sure that they've been able to make an educated decision about what choice they want to make for their child, whether that choice is a sister school or whether that choice is a school within their zone of excellence. We'll also be, during that time, sharing with them, if you choose this is the transportation, right? And again, we've committed to transporting students within their zone of excellence to any school of their choice. So the timeline is for us to really solidify transition moves for parents and for staff by the time we leave for spring intersession. Now, we've also talked to the board about building improvements for some of our sister schools, and that would work through the remainder of the spring and the summer in anticipation of students coming back in August for the school year, 25-26 school year.
So parents and teachers have raised concerns about a lack of transparency during the first two phases of this redesign. How will phase 3 ensure that parents are fully engaged and they're fully aware of what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, while I believe that there are some who would question our transparency, I want to reiterate my commitment as a superintendent to transparency, to keeping the community informed, and to involving the community in the process. And we've done that. Now, the question remains about whether the information that we've presented is information that people are willing to accept. I view that as different than being transparent. We've posted information to our website. We've been, we've communicated when the meetings are. We've had translators there to translate. We've done, we've set up the meetings so that there are small group opportunities so that every voice can be heard. All questions that have been asked have been answered, and I've stepped outside of the formal community meetings, and I've worked to build civic capacity across the community with elected officials, with the Chamber of Commerce, as a result of some of the public comments in the boardroom on the 17th. I've reached out to LULAC to schedule a meeting so that I can continue to meet with them and address any concerns that they might have. I've reached out and I'm working to schedule a meeting with Amanecer so I can continue to answer their questions. I'm more than willing to sit down with any community member and have a conversation and answer any questions. So as we go into phase 3 of Destination District Redesign, we're not going to have formal presentations. What we'll do is we will ask parents, there will be stations set up for them to learn about what the transportation opportunities will be, what the registration opportunities will be, so forth and so on. And I will be there in a separate area for parents, community members, whoever wishes to go in to have an open conversation and ask me questions and continue the dialogue. I will be there and make myself available. There may be some difficult questions that community members have. They have very pointed opinions and a fierce passion for what they're fighting for, just as I do. And, I've shared with the community that this is an opportunity for us to come together to solve some very difficult problems that we're faced with. And this can be an opportunity for us to come together as a community, or it can surely be an opportunity for us to become divided as a community. I choose for us to come together to solve these difficult problems in service to children.
Yes, so I guess kind of a follow-up question on that. So with that meeting, there were so many comments that were voiced. What was your main takeaway from the comments that the parents voiced about this phase 3 of DPR?
Well, we had 28 public comments. I anticipated that, and I anticipate throughout, even in November, that we'll continue to have public comments. My greatest takeaway is that we still have work to do to build trust in our school district. And if I feel like that is the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome. Because even when people are willing to accept the case that we've made about why we need to move in this direction, I think that there are still questions of trust. We want to believe you, but can we? And what I can say to that is that my parents did a great job raising me. And what my father shared with me is that at the end of the day, all you have is your word. And your word means something. And so my commitment is to deliver. And I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver. And when there's a situation where I find myself not being able to meet my commitment, then my responsibility is to come back out to the community and say, I shared that we were going to be able to do this, and I find that we will not be able to deliver on that in the time frame that I shared. That's my responsibility. I would do that with any situation, not necessarily just this one. But, that is my greatest takeaway, that we still are on a journey to build trust within the community for the school district.
Hi, Julia Spencer with KFOX 14 and CBS 4. Since I represent two stations, I just have two questions. One is that some concern has been brought up by parents and community members about the district moving forward with these potential closures without the equity audit being finished. Can you provide some background to those viewers about what the equity audit is for and why is the district moving forward with these possible closures when that audit hasn't been finished yet?
Right. So I'll go back to, I responded to this question at a community meeting, at a Central Neighborhood Association meeting when they asked me that question. And what I shared with them is that when I applied for the position of superintendent in El Paso ISD, one of the things that I had to prepare as part of my interview was how I would address equity and what did equity mean to me. And so at that time, the board was already having conversations about the need for us to think about equity as we went forward and choosing a leader who understood what it meant to address equity issues. And so from the inception of my tenure as a superintendent, equity was always a critical and important part of the plan. As we developed our strategic blueprint, one of our strategic levers is equity by design. We know that in the 140-year history that El Paso ISD has been in existence, there have been a number of inequities that have surfaced and are part of the way that we do business in El Paso ISD, unfortunately. And so we, have followed through with enlisting an external entity to conduct an equity audit. And that is in play right now. As we speak today, that is in play. And the preliminary work that's been done by the auditors has been a document review. And in November, they'll be sharing with the board any information that they've gleaned from that preliminary document review. However, the final equity audit will not be finished with a comprehensive plan that includes findings and recommendations until April, May, or even June. And if we think about the timeline that we're under and the critical nature of the decisions being made, if we wait for the equity audit, there are inequities that we can address with the actions that we take today without having to wait for the comprehensive audit to be released. We're in constant communication with those who are conducting the equity audit to ensure. Now, we're not impeding or trying to influence the outcomes of the audit, but we are in communication with them. So if there's any preliminary information that would inform some of the decisions that we're making within the next few weeks, that we have that information. And that would be solely based on a document review. Because right now, there's, surveys that are going out, to students to respond to and to parents. There are focus groups that are still at play that the auditors need to conduct. And they have to call all that information, mine through all of the data, and put together a comprehensive report, as I said, with findings and recommendations. And so, my response has consistently been that I know that inequities exist right now. And there are actions that we can take today that would serve to begin to bridge those inequities without having to wait for the full audit, in May or June. Now, that audit will continue to inform the work going forward.
My second question is, I know this redesign is focusing on elementary schools within the district. How far down the line would it be until middle schools are considered to be consolidated in the future?
Well, I can't necessarily answer that question. I think that we're focused on the issue at hand, and step one is for us to really look at our footprint and figure out where are the opportunities for us to reduce that footprint so we can allocate resources and really begin to address some of the equity gaps that we have, raise the quality of the educational experience for all students, and really begin to produce better outcomes. That's where we are today. However, we will continue to do an annual enrollment review. We will continue to assess our ongoing, facilities. And so we'll continue to assess and report back out to the board year over year with a comprehensive facilities master plan so that we can determine what would those next steps be. It could include, some additional, I can't tell you what it would include, but we've got to go through and do the comprehensive work that we've done, to make the decisions that we're bringing forth, to the board right now, which has been a good 2-year process, for us. So it would take a good amount of time for us to continue to look at how much more we might need to reduce our footprint as we think about, the future and the continued decline that we expect to see in our enrollment.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, real quick, I know that during the last meeting, and it was mentioned very briefly, the talk about rebuilding Zavala Elementary and being included in a bond. And I think it would benefit all of us here if you could just talk a little bit about the plan to potentially rebuild Zavala Elementary.
Well, that obviously, so I want to be clear about this. All of the recommendations that we're making to the board are with the assumption that there will be no bond, okay? So, because there's no guarantee that the voters have an appetite for a bond going forward, right? So all of the recommendations are under the assumption that there is no bond. However, you also know that the board has approved a contract for a bond strategist, so we are working to build a package going forward to present to the voters. Should a bond, be approved by the voters in the future, in that package, we fully expect to to build a new school in that area. Because what we know is that Tinajero pre-K through 8 is busting at the seams. We have, Cooley and then, Zavala. So we fully expect, as we build a bond package, to include that within a bond.
Thank you.
I know
No,
that you
that's
guys
good,
didn't cut
everyone.
it,
Thank you
but
so much.
the
Super.
news said
You wanna
we
take
have
it?
until 3:30,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only 3:06.
That's
You wanna
fine.
take it?
That's
Okay.
fine. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's fine.
another question that parents are concerned about.
Well, thank
is
you all for
class
being
size.
efficient.
Another question parents are concerned about is class sizes. I know more students will be moving into others if consolidation were to happen. What can you say to those parents about those concerns? Are more classes going to be built and added, or will class sizes increase?
So classes being built and added are not part of the, because we have plenty of space in our buildings. Part of the conversation that we've had with the community is that right now, the average utilization of our elementary schools is 58%. So there's plenty of room to take on students in any of the sister schools that we've recommended. Staff follows kids. So we do not expect an increase in class sizes as a result of these decisions. The state holds us to keeping class sizes 1 to 22, and we have to submit a class size waivers to the state if we go over that. And so we will continue to maintain the recommended class size, and when there's a need to apply for waivers, we will. We apply for waivers now in some cases but we typically do not allow a class to go beyond 24 before we add additional staff, right? So there's no danger of increased class sizes. Now, what I would share with you is that if we're not able to successfully reduce the anticipated budget deficit that we reported in, to the board, there is a risk that class sizes would increase, not necessarily at the elementary level, but now we're talking about a district-wide, situation that we'll have to continue to problem solve.
Anything you can say regarding the ethics complaint filed by the El Paso Teachers Association against EPISD?
I would share that I'm focused on the elements of the destination district redesign work, and that my responsibility is to work with each board member to share all of the information that they need to make an informed decision, and their job is to hold me accountable for the execution of the plan.
And I know if consolidation does happen, 10 new properties will be added to the 16 that the district currently has. Just for an example, say one of the schools on that list is Lamar, and that's right next to Wicks Middle School. Is there a possibility for that property next to schools that remain open for those schools to expand at all?
Well, I mean, that remains to be seen. Again, we've got a bond strategist on board. We're working to develop a bond strategy. If Wiggs is a building that is part of the bond package, and there's an opportunity to expand the footprint, that might be an option. But what I would share about any surplus property that becomes part of the district role as a result of this decision, we've got an aggressive plan to work to offload any surplus property within 5 years. And so I don't believe in the last round of closures there was a well-articulated plan, nor was there a time frame by which we would offload any surplus property. And I also shared with the board that we have successfully, in the 2.5 years that I've been here, really worked to move several of the surplus properties that are on that list in the form of sale and so forth. So we'll continue to work to that end, and our goal is really in 5 years or less to make sure that we're able to repurpose or sell any property that becomes part of the surplus role as a result of our decisions.
We'll just do one more question.
I understand that you guys have a timeline to speak to faculty, find them placements within the district. But what happens to specialty employees, like librarians, nurses, custodians, or special needs teachers? Will certain schools have, say, 2 librarians to the usual 1?
Possibly. Possibly, because here's what we have discovered as we're working through this plan. We have what we call a possible equity add, right? And so as we're looking at building the systems, the structures, and the conditions for all children to be successful in a designated sister school, we're making sure that maybe the campus is going to need additional counselor because there may be more significant needs at that campus than there might be at a neighboring campus because of the transitions that are taking place, because of that sense of belonging that we want to cultivate on a campus, because of the adult student relationships that we want to be positive. So that's an example of an equity add that we may consider. And so when I share that we will continue to have every employee add value based on their strengths and their qualifications, to the school district, we have a commitment to people first. And that's what we'll do. We're going to maximize the strength, the talent, the qualifications of every employee to make sure that they continue to add value to the school district.
Regarding transportation, sorry, someone else raising hand? Regarding transportation, I know bus routes could be increased. You guys, I believe you said during the meeting, not you, the district, during the meeting, that you guys have the buses, you guys have the capacity for bus routes and more students that need it. Will those stops and pathways be accommodated with the right signage and postage and safety for those students waiting during that?
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to work to address any, potential, safety issues, just as we do today. We transport students every day, and safety is critical and important, and making sure that not only do we get kids to school safely, but we transport them home safely. So safety is of utmost concern to us, and we will address any safety concerns just as we do now, as we transport kids. It's no different.
That's all.
All right. Thank you all so much. I appreciate that. And I would invite you all to be part of Destination District Redesign number 3. Certainly, we welcome your presence to capture, what the community is sharing and what their concerns continue to be. Again, we're committed to transparency, to keeping the community informed, and to involving them in the process. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.